Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the podcast. And today we have Natalie joining us to be able to talk about pricing and pricing strategy and everything around how you are doing that in your go-to-market in your business. So Natalie, maybe you give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and your background.
Yeah, great to meet you, Tim, and great to be here. So my background is creating value for companies and enterprises, and value is really delivered two ways: one through your story and your messaging, and then through your pricing and packaging. How do you open those wallets to get people to pay for your software, not just once, but over and time again? So that's where my background is, and been owning pricing and packaging and messaging, that whole value chain for for a while. Don't want to age myself.
I hear you on that one. Okay, so like there's all sorts of stuff people talking about AI and tokens and GPUs and all of these sorts of things that they're all kind of the talk of the town. But like telecommunications was already pricing usage at an insane scale beforehand, right? And then just curious from your point of view, like what made like the texting and voice pricing and all these things so uniquely hard?
Yeah, this is a fun topic because I was doing mobile SMS pricing back in my Oracle days when more people owned a toothbrush than, more people owned a mobile phone than a toothbrush. It was a mobile first world. And so that's when a lot of these problems started coming up, but really since the 90s. But when you think of SMS and mobile pricing, there's a lot of people along the chain. Before that text message, a voice call reaches your smartphone, there's a lot along the steps. And so you start really with the phone companies first. That's your AT&T, your Verizons, Vodafones when you go international. There's a phone company in all across the world, different regions, and they're managing their price to manage their throttle, their demand, their premium traffic, protecting their services. So it starts with them. And then it goes next to aggregators. Now, aggregators are these companies that go and aggregate all the messages from different regions. And because it's hard to go and work with, every single phone company in every single country in every single city, that's just not possible. And so you've got aggregators next, and they're focused on deliverability, availability, the connectivity, routing complexity, fraud, spam, changes in volumes, so then they take a cut of it and they're determining price as well. And then you get next to, the companies, where the software companies are actually going and delivering these. So marketing companies are using it. Oracle, we would deliver SMS messages and mobile marketing. And then the message eventually hits your phone. So you've got all these people along that chain. Everyone here is doing work and everyone's taking a cut. And you've got consistently changing prices and margins that you can't really control when you are the end software company that's going and delivering that mobile, SMS or MMS message or voice call.
Yeah, and we've seen that as well. Like it gets crazy, right? And like a lot of people think about all the GPU and the price and stuff, and AI is crazy, but it's like, well, where did it enter the network? Where did it go off of the network? Which county, which region? What did it go through? How should we price it in each of those different areas, right? And so, in those carriers, like you mentioned, like your cost is changing like all the time depending on how it's routing and it's moving through there, right? Like country, carrier, route, like. How you talked about, your margin. How were they kind of hedging bets and protecting their margins in that kind of a environment?
Yeah, it's really hard because you have this base that keeps changing. And by the way, with all those hands in the pot, now you take on things like foreign exchange rates, currency fluctuations. You're no different than a finance team trying to buy stocks and arbitrage, foreign exchange rates. And so I always compared it to a stock market with moving prices based on supply and demand along that chain. So everyone is concerned about margins. So what they started doing was, how people first started was they took a playbook out of manufacturing companies, take my cost and do cost plus pricing. Here's my cost. Let me go add a margin and then I'm going to sell it. But then you get to, okay, well, sales is selling that and they want to discount things to win logos and they're negotiating. And so they start putting in discounts that starts eating into your cost, right? And then you got changing fluctuations, everything changing in the background. So then that started falling apart. So then people said, okay, well, we're going to have some discount policies. We're going to put some guardrails, where sales has to operate around. And then you And then you put that out there and sales is saying, I'm going to ask for forgiveness later. I'm just going to do this because I need to close the deal. So you start training sales, right? A lot of training sales and enablement. And then they keep doing what they want sometimes. So then you put in deal desk. Okay, we're going to have a deal desk. They're going to go and put in really strict approvals, and they're going to go and manage this. If it doesn't get approved by deal desk, you can't get that deal through. All it takes is a senior executive to come in and say, we need that logo, we're going to discount it. And then everything kind of gets blown away. And then people said, well, then let's go put this into our systems, right? We're going to go code this into our CPQ tool. It's going to flag, it's going to alert. You physically can't go and do that. But then, people can go and override because there's always one-off exceptions. 20 or 30% of your deals are going to be one-off exceptions. And so there's this constant problem where people are trying to keep up, right, and fix the margins. And in some places that didn't work. And so we started going deep into the product. This was at Oracle, where we actually started architecting the product in a different way, where there was no way to go and cut your margin.
Interesting. So, because it's so funny how there's parallels to things that you see happening now. Like this thing, like everybody building AI on infrastructure that they don't own, and it's a variable cost, and it's token based, and I don't know how many tokens going to you, but then I need to convey pricing onto my customer that they're going to understand, see value in, but then I also am going to keep my margins off of that. Like it's such an interesting parallel that you see in there, and I'm curious what you found were kind of like the most painful kind of pricing mistakes that the telecommunications side of things ran into that you just learn not to repeat.
Yeah, there's a bunch. Maybe I'll dive into a couple of like the top ones that are top of mind. So telco has been solving the volatile usage pricing for over 20 years. And if you look at the first one, I would say is flat rate or unlimited pricing based on these volatile routes. And so what happened is they were offering flat rate SMS bundles, assuming average cost would eventually hold. But then the pain they felt there is that traffic shifted to high cost routes overnight, margins flipped negative in weeks. There was like abuse that people had, and they learned that you can't flat rate something that you can't control, right? A lot of parallels now to unlimited tokens and usage. Another one I would say that I brought up earlier was pricing only by country, right? Instead of route quality. So what happens is people had one price per country. It felt simple, right? Very sellable, right? That's very digestible. But then what happened is, right, premium routes subsidized cheaper routes. There was high deliverability paths that got overloaded, cost ballooned invisibly. And it really wasn't that geography was the pricing unit, right? It was the way the network was behaving and the way they were routing SMS messages. I would say another third one is kind of FX rates, right? Foreign exchange rates, assuming that that's stable. And I saw this, back in my finance days, there can be FX swings that wipe out margins within one day, right? So something happening in another country, right? Their economy is falling apart and invoices arrive weeks later. So you're already underwater. And so now finance is losing trust in pricing. And so FX isn't just a finance problem. Pricing people have to think about it. How is that a pricing input and a consideration when we're figuring out our pricing, bundling, and packaging? I mean, there's a whole host of other things, which I'll kind of just like rattle off, but I won't get deep into. But there's like that delayed cost visibility, letting sales discount usage without guardrails, right? That's obvious to us now, but it wasn't back then when they were rolling this out. Treating all traffic as equal. It's never the same. There's different costs there. And then assuming aggregator costs were static, they didn't. Not only were their phone companies changing prices every single day, aggregators started putting in commercial terms. They reserve the right because since they were inheriting those changing costs from the telcos, then the aggregators then said, oh, we can do that too. And then they would then pass that on to the software companies. And then the last one was like no kill switches or usage caps. People didn't have usage caps there. And so there's, runaway traffic because people weren't thinking about that then. Obvious to us now, but not back then.
Yeah. And now you mentioned working with engineering to architect some of the risk in those things out of the actual product itself. So I'm curious on kind of what that relationship with engineering was to basically make that pricing work, that you could build it into the product and engineer some of those guardrails in there.
Yeah. So I'll talk about what we did back then and what I'm seeing happen now. We can, people can take some learning. So what we found was because everyone would go and bypass all these discounts, the systems, and do these one-off deals, we saw, you can sell, let's just say, a $1 million product, and maybe that costs you $1.5 million, because sales doesn't know what those margins are, right? It is opaque to them. So we did the product, we're like, why don't we split this apart? Why don't we say there is a gas fee, which is a hard cost, and then there's our margin. Break it apart. Don't bundle it into something that's opaque where sales and executives can discount all they want. It got to a point where there are certain products that people wanted to kill because the margins were so bad, because they didn't think it was profitable. But being in the space that also owed messaging, I knew that this is solving a big problem for customers. We absolutely have to keep this product. There's no way you have to get rid of your mobile product. It was literally, mobile products are unstable. Let's get rid of them. No, it's a mobile first world. We need it. So we went and said, let's go and sell, when we sell mobile products to the customer, we're going to break out the hard costs that we're getting from the aggregators. And then there's, some other interaction, usage, some other fee. And we broke those apart. Hey, sales, go ahead and discount the interaction fee all you want. But here, the hard costs, those can never be touched. And in fact, we're going to make those very transparent to the customer. You and customer can decide which path you want, which deliverability you want, connectivity you want. There's a different hard cost for that. So pick and choose what you want. And then here's the other fee that we charge. What I'm also seeing people now do is transparency, right? Making sure that whatever you meter and whatever is usage-based, the product has to build that transparency so a customer can log in and see what my usage is, right? Then the usage has to go into your billing, and that has to be completely transparent. And so when that transparency is there and you've already messaged to them, this is what it means, and you can go see it, they can go and self-monitor. And so now you're taking that risk of monitoring it away from you and kind of putting onto the customer. And so they can see, like, what is my usage? Let me go and manage it. Because you don't want to be in the business of managing that usage and managing the margins and the discount. You want the customer to start learning on their own. Okay, here's my usage. This is how much I am willing to pay versus always going to discounts where you've got to eat into your margins.
Yeah. And like you'd mentioned that the unlimited plans and the parallels that we're seeing that in the AI stuff and being a bit of a trap. And I'm just curious of what in general you seeing how history is replaying itself in the AI world that you saw in the telecommunications. Unlimited plan was one. What are other different things that you're seeing play out?
Yeah, when you get into the whole world of usage, it is volatile, it is unpredictable, and there will be spikes. And spikes either caused by seasonality. I'm a business that has seasonality. We do accounting software, so we're going to use more when it's April and it's tax time. Oh, we are a consumer company, and our spikes are going to be around the holidays. So those are known spikes and known seasonality. But then you have unknown. There is an outage. Something happened. There's bad weather somewhere. Planes are delayed. You don't know what's going to happen. And so those spikes that you can't control are very unpredictable, not only for the users, but the companies delivering this have to take on the cost, the people buying it. And when you have something that has high costs and a lot of people along that chain, everything completely breaks. And so you can't have these unlimited plans. So then you start getting into, okay, well, how do I go and give certain minimum commits, right? How do I go and package things differently? Pull apart the hard costs versus the part that's the margin. How do you bundle and package differently? So we're starting to see, in fact, people that were full usage or people that are full unlimited kind of meet in the middle. And that's why hybrid pricing is really popular right now, so that you can go and balance all these competing goals that you're trying to meet.
Yeah. And so like when you look around today and you see these potholes and these places where people can get stuck and it's history repeating itself. Like where do you see people that are almost kind of they know that these are there, but they're just ignoring it for right now, right? And we're just going to ignore that and we're just going to plow through. Like, are you seeing that happen out there?
Yeah. If you asked me this question even a few months ago or a year ago, the answer would be different because people are learning quickly. We are replaying the exact same economic problem with telco, but when it comes to AI, it's faster, it's more expensive. And what took telco years, we're seeing play out in like days and weeks here in the AI space. So if you're looking at tokens when it comes to AI usage, that's like messaging, right? Those SMS and MMS messages in telco. When you're looking at GPU availability, that's like the phone carriers. There's AI inference costs. That was like termination fees. People in the AI space are looking at model priority. There's latency, SLAs. They want throughput guarantees. So you can see those margin risks begin to feel identical. And AI infrastructure providers are doing the same. They've got to do the same thing. They're pricing to manage GPU scarcity and costs. They're adjusting based on capacity and risk, and they're trying to pass that volatility downstream. I'm just going to sell you a bunch of tokens and usage. You figure out and you self-monitor how much you're going to use. And so this is why AI pricing is really looking like telco pricing, but a lot faster.
Right. Now, if you were to leave everybody, that's like, it's one lesson to the AI companies out there that is learned from telecom, that they should really, if there's one thing to take away, what would be that one thing and that piece of advice that you would give them?
I have a lot of takeaways, but let me just give one. So I would say success is what breaks bad pricing. When you don't have success, and you don't have high volume and high usage, all of this will be masked. You'll never realize any of this. And so you can never offer pricing that can't survive your own success. And given the success we're seeing around AI, right? If usage grows faster than your margins, then your pricing is broken, no matter how popular your product is. And so that's the lesson and kind of that telco played out right over the last 20 years. And it took them 20 years to learn that. And AI is actually learning this in months, not decades.
And so you mentioned you had a couple other things. What, if you were some final thoughts, what are some things that you would share?
I think a lot of people, people are pricing for simplicity instead of survival. I understand simplicity. People want clean pricing, something that's easy. I can get it through procurement and fast adoption. But they've got to think about survival, because when margins collapse, more complexity comes later, especially when there's pressure. And there's kind of like a bubble happening right now, right? A lot of AI companies and people are actually okay with cost outpacing income. But at some point, they're going to have an answer for that. I would say they treat usage as value instead of cost exposure. So people are doing tokens, API calls, requests, etc. But usage isn't value. Usage is really risk. People assuming infrastructure costs will fall fast enough. We hope so, right? That there's going to be model efficiency improvements, volumes will soothe costs, but costs don't fall on your schedule and pricing can't wait. So instead of waiting for that, be more proactive instead of reactive. And don't ignore, they ignore abuse until it's too late. So unlimited tiers, generous free usage, weak guardrails, people are going to come in and figure out how to abuse that. There's probably going to be fraud, costs will run amok again. And don't treat volatility as a finance problem. It's like, oh, finance will handle the FX rate. Oh, cloud cost, that's a ops issue. Volatility really belongs in pricing. Not in these spreadsheets, and they need to have an answer to that as well.
Amazing. So that is an amazing amount of information shared in just a short period of time. So I'd really just like to thank you for joining us today and being able to share your knowledge with the rest of the community out here. And again, just thanks a lot for joining, and hopefully everybody can tune into the next episode and we had a little bit more great information to share.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tim.